Welcome everyone to this event here. We're going to be talking about cost seg survey for commercial real estate owners. We're very excited to have you. This live stream will be recorded and it's going to be available with a link to share afterwards, as well as we'll be posting it on YouTube, so you can access that there and share it with anyone that you think might be interested. So we're going to talk about a lot of different things today. It's going to be pretty packed, so very excited to welcome some of our other team members here on the CTA side. We'll be introducing them in a minute. But why are we here? We're basically trying to cover a new productized service that we're offering experienced commercial real estate owners, and that's called the cost seg survey. You can think of it as a one-stop shop for floor plans and tax savings. And we're going to dive in a minute just to learn a little bit more about it. So feel free to drop in comments. We have some folks on our team that will help answer any questions that you might have, and you'll always be able to follow up with us afterwards after this presentation. So on the agenda, we're going to go through over some introductions. I'm going to pass over to our fellow guests here so they can give a little bit of an intro. Then we'll talk about digitizing as-built, also known as existing conditions, also known as where is my floor plan that I would assume I would have had with this building that I just purchased. And we'll talk about cost segregation tax credits. What is that? Or just do a quick overview of the current state of it. We'll then dive a little more deeply into the cost seg survey and what makes it different from a traditional cost segregation study. And then we'll talk about how to get started. And then we can wrap up with any questions that you might have, along with a brief demo of the IPX platform. So to start, I'm George. I'm the head of product here at Integrated Projects. We are a company that's based all over the U.S. and pretty much the world. We operate across many different time zones, but one of the things that we're very, very good at is what's traditionally been called scan to BIM. Essentially, we digitize buildings at scale, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But we'd love to pass it over to my fellow co-hosts here today, Michael and Heather. Michael, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you guys got cooking over at CTA.
I'm Michael Royster. I'm the Building Incentives Manager at Corporate Tax Advisors. We're a tax incentives firm, helping clients to lower their tax liability. Heather can speak more to that, but specifically, the department that I handle is working for any tax incentive that we can find for you for owning a building or constructing a building or project.
Heather?
Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Heather. I'm a Client Services Director here at Corporate Tax Advisors. And as Michael said, our main focus is to work with a company's already existing accounting team or firm to leverage these tax incentives that can help save on your liability. And today we're here specifically to talk about cost segregation and the partnership we've developed, and I'm really excited about that.
Awesome. Thank you both for that intro. All right, so let me just make sure I'm clicking the right thing. Cool. All right, so to step back a little bit, to talk more specifically about integrated projects, I think it helps to understand a little bit about why we're here. Our mission is to improve the world's buildings by bringing them online. That's a pretty lofty statement, but we think that digitizing buildings is a really important step in being able to solve a lot of challenges that we face today. And because a lot of those challenges are both financial, they're environmental, they're social, but being able to digitize them gives us a lot of opportunity for cost-effective ways to understand the built world and how to operate on it. And how we do that today is that we're capturing and converting spaces and then ultimately converting them to accurate 3D and 2D floor plans. We do that in a couple of different ways. We take what you see here on the left-hand side is what's called a 3D scan. We digitize it using various types of hardware, even your phone in some instances. And then IPX is the kind of backbone that we then take that and we turn it into a 3D model and 2D CAD plans. We do that and much more. We also offer, if we take the premise that these buildings are now databases, once we've done that kind of conversion, there's a lot that can come out of that. One of which is floor area data. We can also provide room level data. We can also do things just like simple measurements and takeoffs, as well as throughout the process, we also can provide virtual tours and aggregate them across the portfolio. We do this at different element levels, meaning we don't only just convert the architecture, we also can convert everything that the cameras that we use can see. So think of like any exposed HVAC systems, furniture, etc. And this will all start to make sense when we start to talk about cost seg and why that is valuable, right? Why is indexing this into a robust database so valuable for the industry and built environment as a whole? When we do this process, we ultimately deliver back this information into a very easy to use platform called IPX. This allows you to do very simple things, verify the information that you have so you can understand, take actual measurements from the actual models, and we'll demo this later. You'll be able to visualize the actual CAD plans without needing to have a license for Autodesk or Revit. As an example, you can explore these very easily without needing an additional license. It's all included. You get reports. There's additional reports that you can also order from us beyond cost seg. So it really compounds the value of this service in general. You can also share. The interesting thing is that the value of this visualized information is not just for the building owner, but everyone they work with, from contractors to architects to engineers. Turns out everybody needs this type of information. And we're the first ones to be able to consolidate this into one easy to use platform. And then you can connect. And this is our conversation here today is it's essentially one of the first iterations of what we mean by connecting. Like what happens when you can take this data and pass it over to a partner like CTA that can then do this kind of analysis for you as part of our product. So that we're very excited about this. The other really cool thing is that we're able to do this at scale. Just last year, we converted about 13.5 million square feet of space into these digitized 3D models and 2D CAD plans. And we're only just getting started. Because of the amazing team that we've been able to build here, we're being able to digitize this at a scale that's been, frankly, unprecedented. We also do it around the world, right? We're not limited by geography, though our conversation for today is very US-centric. Cost segregation, at least in the domain that we're talking about, the cost seg survey is a very US-centric tax benefit. Our reach as a company is actually very broad. We do this of any size, from the smallest spaces to super large spaces. And we also do it across nearly every building type, which once we start talking more about cost seg, you'll see the benefit of that as well. So what have we learned? We've learned that it's actually really hard to find a good set of drawings. And if you're in commercial real estate, this should resonate very deeply with you. I'm sure that many of you have anecdotes of doing due diligence on a property and asking someone, hey, can we get the latest CAD plans for this? And either you're met with, no, we don't have CAD plans, or hey, we do have them, but it's on a 24, it's a rolled up series of sheets on 24 by 36 drawings that were done in a very long time ago, right? Here's an example of one, all the way from 1984. And so this is kind of the reality, right? If you think about even in the US, the majority by far of buildings that exist here were built before the 1990s, right? And that kind of makes sense. And so by the 1990s, you have a lot of floor plans that are in some form of disrepair, or frankly, they just don't exist. And if we think about the larger trends, the kind of macro trends in the US around environmental goals, sustainability, et cetera, not having accurate floor plans matters. And just to kind of bring it home to a real example, one of our close friends here is Joe Zink, the CEO of Atlantic Management. They operate out of Boston. And this is a really interesting anecdote from him, is that they acquired, for their strategy, they acquire older corporate campuses that may have been built in the 70s, 80s, 90s. And it turns out that getting their design team to just get started has been very difficult. There's an insane amount of lag where you have to either get the architect then to come on board and then do these existing drawings. It turns out that that's pretty relatively expensive or very time consuming. And really what you want to be doing is getting everyone on the 50-yard line from day one. And this is some of the things that he's kind of expressed to us as we've been working with him about the challenges that him and his team have faced historically. And so if you just take that one problem of not existing floor plans and you extrapolate that to your entire portfolio, all that adds up, right? Every delay, every additional month of holding costs, all of that starts to add up, and it can impact the entire return of an entire portfolio. And so that's something that we're very sensitive to as we've been looking and exploring how to provide financial value from just even floor plans. It turns out that even if we were to ask an architect to provide existing conditions for a property that we might own, it turns out that they're designers. Ultimately, this is not necessarily where they have themselves defined as value add. They see this as just basically the necessity to get started with just the right information, right? And so if we take that to be a premise, well, then there's clearly an opportunity here to provide a service for the entire industry that can just take away that pain and let architects shine in what they do best, which is design according to the problems of local problems of the day. So, and if we were to kind of even just talk about what is the turnaround time traditionally of a set of plans, right? It can be anywhere from 45 to 60 days when you're hiring an architect on a 50,000 square foot project. And the reality is that not all architects are well suited for the job, meaning a lot of times they're not as well versed in the up-to-date tools, technologies that are available for scanning, for capturing the real world, right? And so what that often leads to is many architects relying on hand surveying, manual surveying, or they might hire us in the best case. But oftentimes it really can come down to, depending on their savviness when it comes to even producing these plans, it can be a huge drain on time. And so imagine you trying to start a renovation project and everyone is really not starting with the right information. We know a little bit about that too, because we've been fortunate enough to work on some of the largest office renovation residential projects in the country. And that's really highlighted the point for us about how important these existing condition drawings are throughout the life cycle of a building. So when you're trying to reposition an asset and you're not able, and you end up coming into multiple change orders for something that not many people are experienced in doing, it's critical to have that kind of accurate information at the very beginning. And what could this mean, even just in basic terms? There's a lot of various statistics on this, but one way to argue for this is that about 33 cents on the dollar are spent in just rework, right? We thought that this room was laid out a certain way, and it ended up it wasn't, right? Or we didn't know that this beam was behind this wall, right? And so knowing and recognizing the importance of being able to capture that information, I think can save you an enormous amount of resources. And so what has changed in the general landscape, like what has really been almost like the tailwind to what we're doing here in integrated projects, is the reality that the cost for capture has been decreasing over time substantially. It used to be that you had to pay an exorbitant amount of money to get reality capture done back in the let's say even 20 years ago. But now the technology is getting so good that it's getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. And many of you might already be familiar with reality capture, actually. If you have used a Matterport camera to try to lease out a space, that's actually the type of hardware that we would use in certain instances. And so even on your phone right now, there's so many tools that are using reality capture behind the scenes to add value to your life. So it's just getting cheaper, it's getting smaller, and it's getting more portable and faster. And so that is a huge benefit now to what's possible for commercial real estate owners. And so we're going to talk about is a little bit of also what we've learned throughout the process in terms of like, well, what kind of workflows could ultimately benefit. I highlighted a couple of different stakeholders. I highlighted, through the lens of a commercial owner, through the architect, through the contractor. But even within, let's say, a commercial real estate portfolio, depending on the kind of, you can kind of loop in operators here as well. There are different stakeholders, even within those companies, that could benefit from this information. And that whether you work in acquisitions, right, and you're trying to do due diligence, like during my time as a background, I spent some time at WeWork, and one of the very cool, innovative things that WeWork was doing at the time, and what we've heard of others now doing now, is going in and scanning a space during due diligence. Because one of the interesting things that comes up is that, it turns out that this room is not the square footage that was marketed as. Because these drawings, again, are being drawn up many, many years ago. And a lot of even what, when you start to realize like how much of the entire industry is predicated on, let's say, received knowledge, right? Or we've been told it's a certain number, so we just go with that, right? There's a huge opportunity to actually verify that and negotiate better leases, even that. But even if we just think about like how, if you're a commercial real estate owner, you want to give, let's say, your tenants the kind of documents they need to get started, right? That can help actually with the turnaround time for these projects, and might even reduce the need for free rent, because they can get started much faster and hopefully start construction on day one. In terms of design build, we touched a little bit about that, but even with operations, right? I mean, the things that we're scanning, again, we're scanning architecture, furniture, and mechanical. If you're operating these buildings, then that's also very critical. It's very important to know how much linear runs of HVAC you have, or what do you have inside the building. Turns out that's actually very informative for your operations team and facilities management. So again, the kind of use cases that cut across, being able to visualize, measure, and understand the spaces that you own is compounds. And so one of the things that we asked ourselves when we were embarking on this journey for understanding how can we connect this data to other valuable use cases was we wanted to figure out something that was very tangible and meaningful for owners, in the sense that, sure, a lot of these other use cases, they seem to be applied during the life cycle, but like, what's something that we can kind of even take to the bank? And one of those things that we came across was cost segregation. Now, our team is going to go into it in a minute. But one of the very interesting things about cost segregation is that as a practice, what we've come to learn is that basically they can leverage the same data as well. And it can actually expedite the work that they do. It is very, very helpful and informative, and can actually simplify the process. So when we talked earlier about what we're doing here with this new product, we'll talk about soon, this one-stop shop for cost segregation. What we mean to say is that you don't have to mobilize two people at two different times to come on site to do the same work. You only need to mobilize one person, and you get this kind of like 1 + 1 = 11 benefit. Now you get this massive benefit from just only having to pay for one site visit, etc. And so that's what we're doing here. We're going to introduce now the cost seg survey, and just to position it relative to, again, some of the other things that we're when we start to define this, what is it? In traditional cost seg, you would get a report or analysis that's done, kind of very tabulated set of PDFs that you can pass along to your CPA, that they can then include in their tax filing information. But that's it. That's basically the kind of the where it stops. With cost seg survey, not only do you get that, but you get everything else that we've talked about so far. You get all of this from digital formats that we produce, the 3D models, the 2D CAD plans. You get virtual tours. You get schedules of material elements inside the building, so you'll know how many pieces of furniture you have of X type. You'll know your HVAC units, how many are there, etc. You also get what we talked about in terms of IPX, this collaborative platform where you can share your portfolio with whoever needs to access that kind of information to get started. And so it really is, in terms of the net benefit, is pretty massive. And so ultimately, you get these two things in one, which is really exciting. And the tangible financial benefit that we talked about is that for many of you that are familiar and experienced in this, ultimately, you understand that being able to do cost seg can help accelerate depreciation for up to 30% of your purchase price. And that's pretty, it's pretty massive. I mean, this is basically cash flow, right? This impacts cash flow. This puts cash back in your pocket that you can use and deploy for other projects. And so that is pretty phenomenal. But who better to talk about this than the CTA team? So I'll pass it over to the CTA team and see what else can we learn more about cost seg.
Yeah, you're exactly right, George. And I just want to point out that one other benefit of having this additional information when you do the whole cost seg survey is the support that you get should an audit happen for a cost seg survey. And then also just the documentation very specific behind how did we come up with these numbers, and you have it listed, tangible, measured, without the human error factor that we see sometimes with cost segregation. So that's just a huge benefit on our side that we can provide with this study. So we're making the assumption that many of you who are watching probably are familiar with cost segregation. So we don't want to dive deep into that, but I do just want to do a high level overview in case there are some who aren't familiar with it. But basically what cost segregation is, it's a tax planning strategic tool that we can use that helps owners accelerate that depreciation. So basically what we do is it breaks down your acquisition costs, not including your land. You can see here on the left side of the graph, without cost segregation, you have 80% of your purchase, your building that doesn't include the 20% of land that will not depreciate. You gain this depreciable value over 39 years. So what we do is we come in and we reallocate those costs to different categories. So 15-year, 5-year life. And that allows us to take, that 30% is that's where that number is coming from, is from the 5-year property and the 15-year land improvements. And we depreciate that in a quicker time. So this allows for maximum accelerated depreciation on these qualifying business components. So with a shorter depreciation schedule, you get a greater tax savings. And here's an example of a study that we've done for a client here recently, and it just kind of lays out, I want to give you some numbers so you can see real life example of what a cost segregation can do for you. So on the first line, we have the building and structural components, $757,000, and that's the long life property that we do not depreciate. And then you'll see in the next three as well, we reallocated land improvements to 15 years, $99,825. Trade services and information system there makes up about $187,000. So the purchase, not the purchase price, but the value of this minus the land is about, 1.045 million, right over $1 million. And so when we take out that 30% or about 30% to accelerate the depreciation, they're left with a depreciable value of $287,818, which you'll see the percentage right there is 27.54, getting really close to that 30%. So that's really what they can kind of look at. And that's the kind of things that we do is we come in and we pull those out and reallocate them for this cash benefit. Okay. And I did just want to note, so currently the state of the tax law is that we're at 80% bonus depreciation right now, and it's decreasing 20% over the next several years until it phases out. There is a legislation now. It's the Tax Relief for American Families and Workers Act of 2024. The volatile state of Congress, we don't really exactly know what's going to happen with this, but it is something to note that there is the opportunity for bonus depreciation to go back to 100% if and when we can kind of get this together and get that law passed. So I don't want to dive too much into that. There's a lot going on as of just this morning, but if you have any questions as far as legislation goes, we'd be happy to answer those kind of off of this call. So with that being said, many of you, like we said, know about cost segregation and what it is, but what we wanted to focus on today that many of our clients don't know, and some changes that have come recently, is about qualified improvement property and how you can benefit even more from the upgrades that you make to these existing buildings. So I'm going to turn it over to Michael, who's going to dive more into the QIP.
So qualified improvement property, or QIP, is what we all call it for short. It used to be classified as quality leasehold improvement, but they lumped a bunch of things together, and now it's just all called one thing of qualified improvement property. And this benefits anyone that owns a commercial real estate building entity, and it's anytime you do a renovation to that project, we're able to look at it for qualified improvement property and deduct things at a faster rate than they normally would be for those renovations. Typically, if you do a renovation, it's going to fall into the 39-year category. And with this, we're able to pull out or reallocate anything that modifies, or that any renovations that you've done that does not modify the footprint of the building, the structural portions of the building, and anything on the exterior of the building. So if you come in and you've bought a building and you've got a lessee that's like, hey, we want to extend our lease, but we need a lot of things upgraded. We need some renovations done. And so you're like, all right. And you're like, well, we're going to work on the HVAC system for you. We need a new roof. We need all these walls repaired. We need new plumbing. We need new electrical. Every one of these things that would be typical 39-year property, you can now move to 15-year, and you get the bonus depreciation on it. So if you do these in 2023, you get 80% of that value in the first year of it as a deduction. The only things that don't qualify is if you expand the footprint of the building, modify the structural parts of the building, any elevators, any staircases, escalators, and then if there's anything done to the exterior of the property that's not considered land improvement, then that doesn't qualify. So the main thing is that people don't realize is the HVAC, any roof replacements, and any fire protection systems that you might have to update. Those that are normally 39-year property, we're now able to move to 15-year and accelerate at an even faster rate. So the same property that Heather was mentioning earlier, they had the example that I just gave. They bought a property at the beginning of 2023 that already had existing tenants in it, and the tenants were like, "Hey, we need a lot of renovations done. We're willing to sign extended, 10-year plus leases if these renovations are made." So the owners of the building put in a lot of work. They moved around interior walls that were not load-bearing walls. They put up all new drywall in certain areas. They redid some of the electrical and plumbing within the building, added bathrooms for them, those sort of things. And all of that got lumped into a 15-year instead of it going into 39. So they invested $675,000 into one tenant's property, and they're able to move that all into 15-year. And then they replaced the roof of one of the buildings that's on the property, and that $146,000 that would go for a 39-year property that you just have to wait to depreciate, they're able to take 80% of that in the first year, and then the rest of it just gets divided out over the next 14. So all in all, for this property, they had a total investment into the building basis, so not including the land, of $1.8 million. And then from the existing building cost segregation that we did, they had the $287,000. And then between all of the qualified improvement property work, they ended up having a total depreciation in the first year of owning this building of $1.1 million. And so they're able to take 80% of that. So $820,000 in the first year as a deduction on their taxes. So now we're wanting to talk about how to put things back into your pocket and using that cash to, fund further projects. So George will be able to handle that for us.
I just want to take a minute there to let that sink because that's pretty phenomenal. And I guess one of the things that I think about too, as a former, I was trained in architecture. My wife's a licensed architect, but it's one of this interesting things about in architecture. You hear a lot about how do you advocate for the value of your work, etc. And it was just fascinating to hear you talk about this. Is that this is a powerful tool too for architects and engineers to be able to argue for other benefits outside of the work, right? To be able to say like, hey, and be almost like savvier about the design proposals that they're making, and saying like, yes, the budget is X, Y, but you'll get Z back in your pocket if you work with CTA or someone, like, et cetera, right? And I'm curious from both of your perspectives, like how has this been valuable for other people outside of building owners, like architects and engineers in any way? I know we talked about 179D. Maybe that's something else to maybe just speak on for a second.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you note that. And earlier in our intro, I really should have mentioned a little bit more about CTA and how we do other tax incentives like research and development. You mentioned the 179D, and our focus and industry wise has been the AEC industry. So architects, engineers, constructions across the board for all of those. And so we really have a knowledge of of how these things help in several different areas. So I think that's what makes the partnership between us and IPX great, is because we both kind of focus on that same industry. Michael, what kind of things have you noticed specifically outside of this that have helped the architects and engineers?
So cost seg is a little bit different, just because it's considered more tax. So it probably doesn't ever get mentioned with architects. And this would be something that would be good to educate them on, to be able to add value to their work. And so it's like, hey, here's a value add that we're able to provide for these as-built that we're getting you. But now we're also able to do, hey, we're going to get you more money for all these renovations that we're doing, because we're having to move all these things around, or that's, and they're able to get as QIP property.
It's going to make their work easier, the architects and the engineers, for sure, because they don't have to go back and do the redrawings. They have the digital models and they can get to work right away with those.
Yeah, this is awesome. Thank you for those insights. So I guess now I think we'll talk about cost seg more in depth, or the cost seg survey, and what makes for a good cost seg survey. So admittedly, we really focus on commercial real estate. So we get inbound sometimes from folks that might have bought like a personal property, et cetera. And while there can be benefit there, really the compounding value here is for broader portfolio owners, those that are focused on commercial real estate. And in that angle, we can service any type of space. I highlighted earlier that we've pretty much nearly done it all. I believe including stadiums, which is pretty wild in terms of things that we have scanned and converted into these kind of 3D, 2D assets. But yeah, anything from offices to hotels, gyms, hospitals, data centers, everything in between, we've done it. And so that's really where we think that there's a really helpful value here. How does it work in practice? Well, it's about 5 different steps. One is that you reach out to us. We're going to have a link in the show notes here, in the comments as well, where you can kind of start to get signed up. Right now, we basically have a simple waitlist form because we're really looking for those early partners to help them and basically kind of let's say tweak some of the processes here to make sure everything is going well before we go like broad. But ultimately, once you do that, you can meet with our team. We'll kind of sit down with you and talk about what it is that you're looking to accomplish, what kind of property that you've recently acquired, and then we can mobilize on site after a quote approval. We can mobilize on site, 3D scan, take those into 3D and 2D assets, and then ultimately pass that information over to the cost seg team, who will be able to then provide the full cost seg survey. And then from there, you can then send that to your CPA, who will know how to apply that to your tax strategy. And so it's pretty simple, but it's very powerful. And I want to underscore like the kind of 1 + 1 = 11 of what you get when you do this service. So I'm going to actually just walk through now and demo the actual product itself, so you can see a little bit about sort of when we talk about IPX as the platform, what does that actually mean? And so I think, let's see here. I think if I can get, some help on the behind the scenes. There we go. Cool. Thank you. Thanks, Alvaro. Alvaro's on our team here. He's kind of like helping us on in the green room or the back end area. So, all right. So what are we seeing here? This is IPX, the platform. And what you're seeing here is a kind of demo environment where we have about 6 different buildings. You'll see here that they have little badges on them that say order completed. We're very much about transparency throughout the process. So you will always know when you're mobilizing us to scan a space or and to convert it into these assets and ultimately the cost site, where are things at? Basically, like one thing we talk about a lot is like when you order Domino's pizza, they tell you every step of the way where that pizza is. We're making pizzas here for you, 3D, 2D pizzas. And so the benefit here is that we want to be very transparent, because these ultimately are, very valuable pieces of information, and we want to make sure that that you always know where they are. And so from here, what you see is kind of like this this dashboard. You can see a little bit of the space steps you have, your total verified square footage across your portfolio. Verified being important, that really means something. It's important that you feel you can trust this number, and we try to highlight that in many different ways. But I'm going to click into one of these projects, this warehouse, and then you'll be able to see, okay, when we think about managing this portfolio, how do we view these models? I don't have Revit. I don't want to open Revit to be able to view the 3D. I don't have AutoCAD. I don't need to do that, right, as an owner. Well, you don't have to. And so what you see here is the actual 3D model of the warehouse, the existing conditions of it. You'll be able to notice a couple of things. We can then easily zoom in. We can see everything. I mean, to the smallest level of detail is all included. We have a schedule on the right-hand side, which includes every single element. And we can kind of highlight where those are. You'll also notice that we have on the left-hand side here, floor plan. So we include not only the reflected ceiling plan, but also the actual plan itself. And we have tools down here that allow you to quickly basically take some quick measurements between different elements inside the model. Going to move back to this view. We talked a little bit about virtual tours. Super important, especially nowadays, where if you think about how digitized even the buying experiences or the leasing experiences, it's really important to be able to visualize that space for people. If people can start to look at the space and make decisions remotely, that opens up the possibilities of who can be your tenant. And so we offer a way to store all of these virtual tours, right? And so you can quickly, this is a Matterport one. We also include one that takes over the entire location itself. And again, these are scans that we have produced ourselves. Give it a second. This one might be a little bit, we may need to troubleshoot this one for a second. The rule of demos is that if there's a chance it can go wrong, it will go wrong. But the other last thing I'll note here is we have the actual cost seg survey also as part here. So this is an example of what you would get. And so not only would it be everything that we just talked about, but you also get this PDF that you can easily hand off to your CPA. And it includes a very, really beautifully designed, very clear description of everything that's included, everything that's been itemized out. So we have all the different elements broken out into their respective asset classes. And then you then also get this location report, which is more of another document that you can take out and share with other folks that might need that information, whether it's brokers, etc. And so here you have your floor plans and even a 3D axonometric view to help with that. And also you get itemized inventory. And so what's powerful here is very easily you can download this, send it, and get cash back in your pocket. Let's say you're trying to share, let's go back to this view just to visualize it a little bit better. Let's say you're trying to share with someone else. You have a potential tenant, they need CAD plans. We've actually talked to several people in which when they acquire a property, there's no plans. So often you'll get this interesting situation where a potential tenant is like, hey, do you have CAD plans? No, we don't. Okay, where can I get some? And then that just snowballs into prolonged decision making, into prolonged holding costs potentially for that unit, and it just kind of snowballs, right? And so if you can have that already in hand, think of not only the time you'll save, but the money you'll be able to earn faster. So that's also really critical. And so how can we do that? Very easily. You can control access to each location. I should note that we're SOC 2 compliant and certified. And so that means something. That means that we take security very rigorously, and it's very important to us, and as it should be. And so I believe in terms of anyone that's doing a similar type of service, we're the only ones that have SOC 2 compliance to allow for this type of security across your locations and portfolio. And so from here, you can provide the access to view and download. Let's say it's a contractor, right? A GC at X, whatever, give them access, and they'll be able to view and download the information that they need from this model. Beyond that, when we talk about teams, very easy to add team members here. You can add them and then collaborate across different team members in your project. And that kind of summarizes it. I mean, I think one last thing to note is that we also provide support within the product itself. We want to make sure that we can answer your questions in a timely manner. And so we also include that functionality within here. We allow you to learn about the product as we release features, et cetera. We also allow you to meet with our team at any moment to answer any questions that you have. So support and customer support is very critical to us. We want to make sure it's about as white gloved for you as possible. And so that's another big component here. I think, and that kind of wraps up the demo portion of it. I think we can kind of go to if there's any questions so far that people might have. We do have one question here. I think this is more for the CTA team. Charlie Morris, does the same immediate 80% depreciation with QIP apply to FF&E investments into physical spaces within an owner's building?
So the 80%, it's all based off the year that the renovations are made. So as with cost seg, everything's based off of the year a property is put into service, and then the year that the renovations are put into service. So if you buy a property in 2001 and you do a cost seg study on it, then you're getting 100% bonus depreciation for that property. If you do renovations in 2023 to that property, then you're at an 80% bonus depreciation, because that's what the IRS code says for 2023. And then so if you do them in 2024, it's a 60% bonus. It's scaling down as the years come currently. Hopefully with this new legislation that's coming through, that'll change and it'll all bump back up to 100% for the next few years.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Let's see. I guess I have a question also for the CTA team. I mean, from your own experiences, when we started this relationship, it was really interesting to hear some of the challenges that you also saw on the ground with some of your clients about experiences that they were having without plans. Can you maybe describe some of those, like basically what's been the reaction to this from your side?
So one client I'm thinking of, they own a very large, used to be a manufacturing facility that has been turned into an industrial park. It's over 500,000 square feet of space between warehouse and actual office space. We were bringing this up. We're talking about a cost seg survey, and they were like, "Man, if we could have as-built drawings of all this 500,000 square feet that we have, we can take it to potential clients and say, hey, this is the facilities that we have that are available for lease. These are what's offered in them. Here's what you can already see it without having to come on site and look at these sort of things. We can email it to you. And then when you do come on site, you can have this and say, and as you're going through it with people and like look at it, we're like, okay, hey, this is what we saw. Like, let's go back through and remember. And it's like, oh yeah, I remember these outlets were here. This pneumatics was here, like all this sort of thing. So they were really interested in the idea of being able to advertise their properties by having this virtual, basically virtual reality of their property.
Just to add to that, when we launched this product a couple of months ago, it was just kind of crazy to see the light bulb go off in people's heads. Like, oh, I need that and I need this. Like, why has nobody ever thought to bring it together before? So I think that's what we're really excited about. Is it's not something that it's a new thing. It's a new product, and I think it's on the leading edge of technology in both realms. And so that was just really exciting to see people go, oh my gosh, that's genius. We get to have both. We don't have to go find two different service providers. We don't have to have two different site visits. It's so much faster than doing them individually. And so I think it was just the excitement at how this can really streamline the processes that they're already doing as real estate owners.
That's awesome. I mean, I guess in terms of like parting words for us with the audience today, I think what one takeaway for everyone is that, you know, there is a new and better way to do things. It is affordable to do it, and it can put money back in your pocket. And you have, for the first time ever, 2 world-class teams here available to provide this service for you. So, you know, I think we'll add some of the links in the comments on this LinkedIn, and when we put it on other channels, we'll be sure to add those links as well, so you can reach out and get this started. There you go. We got it here. Integratedproducts.com cost seg survey. Let's get started. Let's get cooking. All right, everyone. Well, I appreciate Heather, Michael, for joining us. Everyone that joined us here on LinkedIn and wherever else this will land. Really appreciate your time and your curiosity and learning more about what it is that we're doing here. And hopefully we'll talk to you soon. Thank you
Thanks,
so
George.
much. Cheers. Have a good one.